Dr. Starkey and the Minister to speak for the next 20 minutes. Dr. Starkey, are you wanting to combine your time with the Minister?
Yes, please.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister, for being here today. Just a couple of brief comments to Deputy Minister Morart. My condolences to your community, and I'm very familiar with Humboldt, having traveled there on a number of occasions. I know the veterinarians, Dr. Swatsky and Dr. Althaus, Dr. Paulson, very well, and have even gone up to your Oktoberfest to polka with the Little German Band. So it's certainly been something that has really struck us. Minister, thanks for your comments with regards to rural connectivity. I'm really glad that that's something that is on your radar screen, clearly with regards to the renewal of the SuperNet contract. I guess my question is, Minister, are you familiar with this document, the Rural Economic Development Action Plan?
Our department, I believe, has seen that. Yep.
Okay.
And
great.
contributed.
Okay.
Yep.
The reason I raise it is because you mentioned that you're going to embark on a process with regard to, sort of a consultation process with regards to rural internet enhancement, let's call it. I'm going to suggest that by all means go ahead and do that, but a lot of that work has been done. A lot of that work was done in 2014 as part of this process, and at virtually every engagement session, and there were a number of them around the province with rural Albertans, they identified internet access as being a concern. The phrase we heard again and again was, Alberta's is the best in the country, and it's nowhere near good enough.
Yep.
So that's, a place to build from. I'd really recommend strongly that you discuss with people in the Agriculture Department that would still be familiar with this report. And specifically, I'm going to reference page 14, where under the actions on Strategy 4.2, it talks about dealing specifically with Service Alberta on the renegotiation of the SuperNet contract.
If I can be assistive, we contributed to that,
okay.
And you may have misheard. I did not say that we were engaging in a consultation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I guess, if you're not already familiar with it, the ONET that they've got in Olds.
We are very familiar with that.
Good,
yep.
good. I would think that it's a model as far as rural broadband. But on the topic of rural broadband, rural Albertans, you've correctly identified that access to the internet is really variable, really spotty. And I guess one of the concerns that I get in my office quite often is internet service providers that charge extremely high overage fees when data limits are exceeded. I'm just wondering, first of all, is Service Alberta tracking complaints on that? Is it something that you hear about as well? And secondly, is there any action being planned on some of that? Because I think it's an area of consumer protection that really hasn't been dealt with yet, but it becomes more and more of an issue.
Yeah, so there's a number of things that feed into this. First of all, questions about what do we hear? Absolutely, we hear this kind of thing from Albertans all the time. We hear this from their representatives as well in RMA and AUMA. So this is not news to us by any means. That being said, we work with ISPs and communities in order to try and get more connectivity and service to them that is affordable. Much of the reason that we've heard from ISPs as to why these overages are expensive and why overall service is more expensive in the rural communities is due to the low population, and so they don't have the same market availability, the same market population that drives the costs down in larger population centers. We agree that these costs are unreasonable and do not match with the expectations that modern folks have today, regardless of where they live. Part of the problem is who is regulating that ISP. For a lot of them, it's regulated by the CRTC.
Right.
And so the CRTC has a major role to play. They recently came out and set standards for connectivity, right. But we have yet to see the federal government in a meaningful way back that up with appropriate investment.
Right. Well, and I know that, in rural Alberta, I'm sure you've heard this phrase used as well, the digital divide. And it is an issue, and especially a Service Alberta, not just Service Alberta, but government, and not just government, but businesses have moved towards a situation where if you're not on the internet, if you don't have solid internet access, you really become, it's maybe an overused term, but a second-class citizen. And it's certainly a concern because, in some cases, sparsity of population notwithstanding, that's something that's not going to change in a real big way.
Yep.
And certainly these ISPs have got to recognize that. My second area that I wanted to talk about is a little bit in page 133 of the business plan, dealing with the My Alberta digital e-services and the My Alberta digital identity account. Now, last year, and I dug out last year's business plan and looked at the target numbers going forward, and I compared them to this year, and I noticed that the target numbers have been significantly downgraded in both 4C and 4E. Last year, your target, for example, for 2018-19 under 4C was 300,000 Albertans registered with My Alberta digital identity accounts. That's down to 100,000. Last year for 2019-20 was 500,000. Now that's down to 250. And for the number of transactions completed through My Alberta, and I guess the two are related certainly, the target for 2018-19 this year is 680,000. Well, last year that number was 1.3 million. The number for 19-20 this year is 750,000. Well, last year that number is 1.5 million. Why have the numbers been reduced so dramatically?
I'll ask my ADM, Mark Brisson, to contribute.
So Mark Brisson, Service Alberta. So over the last year, we've been looking at replatforming and establishing some of our technologies on digital ID. And for the most part, we have a digital ID product. We've been actually spending the majority of our time on a verify service so that we could verify the service online. As we are moving forward with that technology upgrade, we are working with each of the ministries at the same time to look at opportunities on how a digital ID can help leverage their services into a digital age.
Okay.
And that's an ongoing process. So we have discussions ongoing with health, with some of the social services ministries, as well as into the environment and resources ministries to see where they already have a digital presence with Albertans. How can we bring that into having kind of a one enterprise view of that? So we're in ongoing discussions. And over the last year, at the same time, we've been working on how digital ID can be implemented in part of our disaster recovery services, or if we have any evacuations or emergency services that are needed. So we spent the majority of our time, I wouldn't call it drumming up work, but actually working with the ministries to say what makes sense, where we can have the right investments on these digital transformations.
Okay.
So you're saying that the feedback that we received from them indicated that there would be lower uptake than we had originally anticipated?
Yeah, we had anticipated that we would be moving a lot quicker with a lot of the ministries, and as a result of anywhere from budget to resources, or just the fact that when is the right time to move these together online in an integrated way. Once we have the verify process fully implemented across government, I think we'll be able to increase those uptake numbers.
Okay. So to borrow a horse racing analogy, we were in the gate, we got out of the gate, we stumbled a little, or we're a little slower getting out of the gate. I shouldn't say stumbled. We're a little slower getting out of the gate, but we're still in the race, and we're going to pass everyone on the backstretch and still reach our goals.
Maybe some of the gates didn't open. One of the horses is out almost at the finish line.
I've seen that.
Another horse is not out of the gate yet.
Okay.
And the coach is come on.
Okay. No, that's fair enough. Okay. So I want to move on to another sort of target or strategic outcome, and that's on the middle of page 132, and that's performance measure. And Minister, I think I heard you say a little while ago saying that you always want to do better, and that's one of your goals, and that whatever level you've achieved, you want to see improvement. So I guess I'm puzzled by performance measure 3B, the percentage of internal clients that are satisfied with the services received from Service Alberta. Now the actual in 16-17 was 83%. That, in my math, is 5 out of 6 and is pretty good. But I noticed that the targets for the next 3 years are a flat line at 80%, which in fact has already been achieved. You're already there. So I guess I'm just wondering why the goals are I'm going to use the word tepid.
So, obviously we take pride in the work that we do to support client ministries, and we continually look for ways to improve service delivery. And as you've noted, one of the ways that we do this is to gauge the performance through client satisfaction. The results for this measure were historically in the mid to high 70s. However, in 2016-17, the department worked to refine the way that clients were identified to more accurately reflect the client base of some of the services, marking an instant one where the results were over 80%. So as we move forward, we'll continue to monitor the trend of this measure and make appropriate adjustments to the target.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. I mean, I think that's appropriate, and I certainly agree with the statement you made about, always trying, continuous quality improvement, I think is something that we should all be striving for. Again, looking back at last year's strategic plan and comparing, relatively marginal changes from last year to this year, but one thing that really stuck out to me is last year, one of the identified risks to achieving outcomes was succession planning. And I won't read the whole succession planning paragraph, but it was on page 131 of last year's business plan, and I looked for that same thing, succession planning, and because it talked a lot about baby boomers going into retirement and job creation through economic diversification and matching skill sets, and I said, this is all really appropriate stuff, and it's exactly the kind of risks that very much are a strategic risk. In 2018, this is nowhere to be seen. I'm just wondering, has that risk been mitigated? Has it been eliminated, or is it just an oversight? Or why are we not finding succession planning anymore as a strategic risk?
So you're saying you hope to see carry through these risks. This risk portion of the business plan is a new requirement of TBF, and so I would suggest that we just don't, have our reviews, really completed with respect to how we should probably carry forward risks.
Okay.
I gave you some new stuff, but perhaps there should be consideration overall for GOA to carry forward.
Okay. I had to write these business plans or help prepare these business plans as well, Minister. And I do think, though, that the risk analysis part of it is important in terms of, that's part of a good strategic planning process, is identify, what are the risks that you have out there to not achieving your goals. And I would certainly agree that succession planning is one of them. So
yeah, this is only the second year of those risks required.
Fair enough.
We have processes to refine it.
Great. Okay, so then I want to move on to another area, and that is with regard to consumer protection. Now, earlier in your opening remarks, you talked about having a trusted relationship in a trusted marketplace, and I certainly agree with that. I think during the course of debate on the Consumer Protection Bill last year, I certainly mentioned that as well. So I'm curious, Minister, as you know, I had some difficulties with the veterinary provisions under the Consumer Protection Bill. So I'm curious to know, Minister, clearly your ministry or you personally identified the veterinary profession as being something that needed to be looked at. So I'm curious to know, since Bill 31 was passed last December, how many complaints has Service Alberta received with regards to veterinarians?
So this is now under the purview of labor, and so
the regulations development, correct?
Yes,
okay.
But also overall, when there's complaints with respect to vets, it gets routed to labor.
Okay, that's okay. That's puzzling to me, given that you're responsible for consumer protection. Okay, well that's fine. So in other words, so do you have any information then with regards to how many calls then have been redirected to labor since the bill was passed? Because having taken sort of the lead on this role back when you drafted and brought forward Bill 31, I would have expected the general public to identify Service Alberta as being the appropriate agency within government to call.
We can get you the statistics that we have available. Okay. I don't have them in front of me, but
okay.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate knowing that. I will say that, I checked with the Alberta Veterinary Medical Association, and their information they passed to me is that no one has called the Alberta Veterinary Medical Association since December, having identified that they were referred from any agency of the Alberta government to go talk to them about a veterinary complaint. So I bring again to question with regards to just how big a problem this was. But I do want to ask then about something else. You mentioned when we debated Bill 31, and this all goes back to your opening remarks about consumer protection, that one of your goals is to deal with what you said were people operating on the fringes, I think was the term you used, in terms of, that we have very reputable car dealers, but then we have some ones that operate on the fringe. And that we have reputable ticket sellers, but then we have folks that are ticket scalpers. And so, I think you're right. There are always people on the edges of any reputable operation. So we have those in veterinary medicine too. We have folks that will claim that they'll cure your animal with things like flashing lights, with mysterious potions and remedies. And my own personal favorite is pet seances.
Oh dear.
And you can't make this stuff up. They charge people for this, and they claim to bring about benefit to the animals using this, and people pay a lot of money for this. So I guess my question is, these folks are clearly operating on the fringes of veterinary medicine. They are not licensed by the Veterinary Association. They are not subject to any sort of disciplinary procedures through the veterinary profession. And I'm just wondering, is your department doing anything to take a look at the operations of these folks that are essentially practicing veterinary medicine, but clearly are not qualified to do so?
I think that we have those same issues with respect to humans as well. I would suggest that it's not limited to animals. There is certainly a range, within where government action may be necessary or required. I will say that with respect to the veterinary changes around advertising, I personally went and attended the chamber consultations, and there was one veterinary representative at one of the chamber meetings that specifically asked me to change the rules to allow for posting of fees, as it's a mobile veterinary service. I have not had anyone ask me or any letters come across my desk with respect to this issue, but I always welcome hearing from Albertans.
Okay. Well, I mean, I will tell you that, if the concern, and I think it is a legitimate concern, is to protect Albertans against those that are operating on the fringes and potentially taking advantage of the general public, I will tell you that there are folks out there that in my view, are operating and purportedly practicing veterinary medicine without a license or without any training to do so. And so they are there.
I agree. And I think that if the association wants tools to be able to deal with that section, I think the Minister of Labour would be open to hearing that. But additionally, in any area of business practice, regardless of whether it's something that we specifically regulate, we do have tools legislatively to deal with unfair practices, misrepresentation. So, for example, there was a number of complaints that came to us around matchmaking services, not online, but matchmaking services, where this woman would be set up with someone who appeared to be homeless and didn't have any teeth, I believe was the report, and the matchmaking service just guaranteed number of matches but not quality, and so we have engaged in investigations on that.
Well, Minister, it's an interesting segue from veterinary seances to matchmaking services, but I think we're going down a bit of a rabbit hole.
Sort of an example of where we investigate, any sort of misrepresentation.
Well, we'll pass those along. So finally, page 130 of the business plan, where you're again talking about identified challenges in the marketplace for the consumer. And one of the challenges you list on that page is information overload, and that there is an overabundance of consumer information. So, Minister, Albertans are currently accessing current and upcoming government services via new technology. What specifically are the strategies for addressing this perceived, or I mean a very real problem with regard to information overload. I'm relatively confident in saying that the amount of information that consumers are bombarded with is not going to decrease, and it's in fact going to increase. And I think that if there is one challenge that we have is determining the alacrity of that information, and that in many cases that information, I mean, if all of that was right, I'd be a Nigerian billionaire right now. But I think we know that a lot of the stuff that is on there is just simply not trustworthy. But how is your ministry helping consumers sort through all that?
As one of my elementary teachers used to say, the internet is a garbage can in which you might find some jewelry.
Thank you. For the next
Brad to end.
For the remainder of this meeting, I would like to